Welcome everybody. Just extending my warm welcome to you all. Thank you for coming down. When Pastor Matthew gave me uh, this portion, I had initially didn't read it carefully, and then I read it carefully. I'm like, oh boy, this is way above my pay grade because because it's talking about false teachers. So I thought somebody has to be a teacher first to call out, false teachers. So my attempt to it would be, I have tried to go through it multiple times to kind of come out with some of the things, and you could judge how well I have done that. But Daniel, if you could have the verse on the screen, so we could read this once. So this is Titus, chapter 1, 10, verse 12. Just to give a recap, in the evening service we are doing a series on Titus. So Titus was a letter written by Paul to Titus, whom is sent to a small island called Crete in Greek, which I figured out is still the same name. Usually the biblical names get changed, but thankfully the same name. And the place was very notorious. They had a lot of liars, drunkards, heavy bodybuilders kind of people who would beat people up. And there were multiple house churches and there, which Paul had initially planted. So, and then Paul realized that this lot of false teaching and other things coming into church. So hence Paul, sent out Titus to finish what was unfinished. So that's the background of this. And in the previous verses, the letter addresses the sense that what should be the qualification of a good elder of a house church. And one of the reason he does that is because the house church is now penetrated with a lot of other people, whom Paul is not very, have a high, high value with. So let's read the verses, which is just, 6 verses, which is verse 10 to verse 6. For there are many rebellious people, full of meaningless talk and deception, especially those of circumcision group. They must be silenced because they are disrupting whole households by teaching things they ought not to teach, and that for the sake of dishonest gain. One of Crete's own prophets has said it: Cretans are always liars, evil brutes, and lazy gluttons. This saying is true. Therefore, rebuke them sharply, so that they will be sound in the faith, and will pay no attention to Jewish myths or to the merely human commands of those who reject the truth. To the pure, all things are pure, but to those who are corrupted and do not believe, nothing is pure. In fact, both their minds and consciousness are corrupted. They claim to know God, but by their actions they deny Him. They are detestable, disobedient, and unfit for doing anything good. And as I've read it, the entire 6 verses is pretty strong coming out. At least in this, Paul is not thinking about his writing, a letter, which would be read in Sunbridge today. He was, so he has all his passion behind, writing these letters. So hence, I went a bit, all right, put that as an alert false teachers. So what are, so just to figure out what is the characteristics of these false teachers, and try to delve that. Next slides. Well, they are rebellious people, they are meaningless talkers, they are deceivers, and the last being very key, always looking for monetary gains. and I will come to the second part. So, rebellious people basically means that, so one of the way to identify a kind of false teaching is the sense that these are people who look good on the face of it. They are in church, they are, because if people has to listen to somebody, they have some amount of charisma or leadership position so that they are able to influence, others people. But the way Paul puts them is rebellious people. That means they rebel against authority, and in one sense, at that time, they are saying about is, apostolic authority. In our current world, we can kind of say that they are against the biblical authority, kind of what written is in Bible. And I have seen enough YouTube shorts to figure out that people come up with really, really crazy ideas of simple verses written in Bible, and they're not complex enough. One could read something and could just take a literal meaning, but people just make it something else. They are meaningless talkers. That means that they would keep on saying things which seems mystic, nice, very pleasant to ears. I have seen best motivation speakers in pulpit rather than in an actual place. You could listen to them and they go, wow, only to realize half of them they have said is basically empty or kind of meaningless. Deceivers, that means what they say is not what they mean. And I've kind of seen this on my own life is, the people who would come with an agenda, they are wolf in sheep's clothing, to kind of put mildly. And they always look for monetary gains. I don't remember the person, but it's in Acts where he asked, Peter, to give Holy Spirit in exchange of money, right? And here they don't do that, but the idea is that, like Paul mentioned, Paul is doing this for the passion of Lord, love of Lord, but then they don't do that for us. They need that because they need money or corporate jets or nice houses. But the biggest of this thing is that they are not outsiders. They are not people outside of the church system as a whole. What they are is they are people within the church whom we know, who profess they are Christians, and kind of preach on a Sunday morning and kind of open the same Bible and teach it from there. And I guess that's where the Paul's anger come in. I guess he wouldn't have mind if it was some outsider who was doing it. And hence you could see these really strong words coming to these people, because they are taking the Bible, the gospel, and turning it upside down and teaching entirely different. Now, what happens? Next slide, Nigel. Now what happens? One is they turn people away from the truth. Like especially in the morning when Luke was preaching about temptation and sin and trials. And to be honest, it wasn't very nice. I wouldn't felt nice after the morning service, to be kind of put bluntly to you. And I had read a church motto. It was in their website where it was very clearly, and so this is, they are not even hiding it. They had said it's to make you feel good when you come to church. So that's in their website as a motto. So at this point, they are not even trying to hide what they are trying to do. So the idea is that you kind of come and make people happy, feel good about what they are. interpretance, in the sense that in the wider framework of, oh hey, God loves you, which could then mean that you could kind of keep doing whatever you could do, and what essentially means that then they got turned away from the truth, because then really they won't understand about trials or temptation, um, and then they never get into the purity part of it, which kind of Paul mentions in verse 15 and 16, and I will come to that. And the second is create confusion amongst new disciples. Maturity in Christian life, and as it in any life, a job or studies, whatever we do, it takes time for us to become mature, try to understand what is wrong or what is right, and that's a stage where they need correct teaching, correct support, and not always feel good messages. And that's where this thing really goes south, because then you have new people whom you could emotionally kind of make them work, and they are at that stage, and all this false teaching goes into their minds, and then they stray away from the truth, and unfortunately kind of no fault of them, and that's where sometimes my anger comes in, and then I could feel Paul's anger into that. Now this was first century. We are in 21st, as they say. I don't think hasn't changed much, and then hence our role comes in. Next slide. Which is a quote by C.S. Lewis. Good philosophy must exist if for no other reason, because bad philosophy needs to be answered. And we could change that word philosophy into theology or whatever we can want. Nobody has a 10, I don't know which currency UK has. Just mentioning somebody, nobody prints. I'm just assuming that we don't have a £100 note. Is it true? Yeah, we do? Okay, let's take it 200 then, whatever that is. No, yeah. So nobody makes a fake £200 currency, right? Nobody makes a fake currency, say a 200 note, say, hey, this is a new one which kind of government made it. They are going to print the 100 one or the 51, whatever that is, because the way it falls, if a false theology always follows a good theology, and hence C.S. Lewis correctly mentioned, saying that we need people who profess good theology, just not for their own sake probably, but for the sake that we need to point out where the philosophy is bad. And that's what Paul is asking Titus to tell to the elders, that we need to kind of deal with this. And next slide, Nigel, and that's what. And so the word Paul uses is silence and rebuke sharply. That's a two word, and they are the exact words in the Bible which he uses, is silence and rebuke sharply. Now, I don't know people who have seen few kind of people like that who are very stern or very strict when they kind of deal with the bad teaching per se. But silence and rebuke sharply is not the word which comes to, at least in my mind, when I kind of think of the false teaching. That means that it is our duty as a church, or if we believe that we have correct theology or correct teaching, that means then we ought to go out and silence and rebuke both. And so rebuke itself is a strong word. I can Google the meaning, and then Paul qualifies it by saying rebuke sharply. So he's really not mincing anyways here. He's like, this thing has to be dealt as strongly as possible, because else it is going to eat away everything what the Paul, what kind of Paul had planted in Crete. And I guess that's what come for us. And we know that there's enough bad theology out there which is eating up people. People get all kind of ideas from YouTube videos and kind of preachers, a nicely musical background, like when they're preaching, they kind of put kind of nice background music when they put that in the face, and you kind of feel a nice feeling when you hear that. And that's where we step in to kind of either silence them or either rebuke them. Now, in practical sense, that would basically mean that we would, when we meet people who are saying that, then we could get a chance to either silence them or rebuke them. But that's what Paul is asking Titus, like that. That's what Paul has told Titus to go and tell them, that no way out. It has to be silenced and it has to be rebuked in no uncertain terms. Now, to do that, we have ourselves has to know good theology. That means to rebuke bad theology, we need to know good theology. And just kind of take off, C.S. Lewis quote earlier, that we need to know good theology, because that in one sense of a duty, because there are other people who are not able to get the correct, just to kind of take two real life examples. One, I was watching a kind of a documentary on Christianity in Iran, and kind of how they navigate their faith life in terms of persecution. And one of the person told that we don't get enough Bibles, in the sense that the way it is available, accessible to. Is that that is not our problem. That is not the problem of Iranian church. We can share Bibles with it. Others, we kind of clear pages and kind of keep sharing it. The biggest trouble for Iranian church currently is that almost all the sermons which is available in the in the televangelical world is kind of translated into Farsi and telecasted to them, and a group of, or let's say a nation which is just starting in their Christian faith, of which most of them don't have the Bible, so most of them have accepted Christ without even reading one page in Bible, only to fed with prosperity theology. And he was like absolutely angry that we have to deal with right now. We are not dealing with the problem of persecution or somebody hitting us. Like, that is fine, we can deal with it, but we don't know how to control that. And that's what and we could see the anger or that frustration in his face. The other was in I was reading a book, and the book was so the author of the book was interviewing some people in Russia right after the breakup of USSR, and then they was telling that, so of course in its intense persecution, house church, nobody knows what, like, and they had the same comment, like, we don't have a problem with the Russian government persecuting us. For us, the bigger problem is that there are many preachers who have come up with some agreement with the government to kind of like not to preach gospel fully, like whatever agreement they come. So now then they have to deal with these preachers and not the actual enemies. So they're like, we are fine with people persecuting us, but we just don't know what to do with these guys. And I guess if they can have that frustration in us, probably it's a good time we could kind of we see, because how we could inherit some of those frustration, because that's what Paul is having, that is what Titus is having, that this is going to eat away genuine people who have come to Christ and who wants to enjoy Christ. And hence the third point, don't satisfy with a superficial understanding of the Bible. And I guess that's also pretty important, because then we really don't know how to deal with some of this issue. Next slide, please. This I picked up from the room upstairs. It's written there, and it has challenged me from last 1 week. It says Christianity false is of no importance. If it's true, it's of infinite importance. the only thing it cannot be is moderately important. Uh, and, and C.S. Lewis, I don't know how he comes up with such ideas, but he's basically pretty true. And I guess that's what my last, my previous point was, that we can't get kind of satisfied with an overall, an outlook of Bible. Oh, well, I know what is gospel, what is salvation. I cannot come to church, give a bit of money to building fund. This looks all right. I am happy, and that's what that Paul don't want was to us, and that's what he mentioning. C.S. Lewis mentioning that the only thing it cannot be is it's moderately important, because devil is really happy with people who are false teachers, because they would want him to, devil is very happy with them, and they are rich. Their buildings are really, really big. Their church buildings are really big. They get lots of money, fundraising, jet, and everything. And we would have to, run 3 peaks to get some money, isn't it? But you would see the difference, right? It is very evident, right? That they get the big bucks, and everybody is very happy. They are very happy. The only thing is that they are wrong side of the road. But then that's where we come in, both in terms of rebuke and silence both. But we can't do both. We ourselves don't know what is the correct path, or what is the truth, and what is actually written in Bible. So next slide. This is verse 15, which I mentioned that Paul ends up by saying that everything is pure to those whose hearts are pure, but nothing is pure to those who are corrupt and unbelieving, because their minds and consciences are corrupted. And the verse 10, he does mention about some of the Jewish Christians, asking others to get circumcised. And he's saying is that, again, the problem here is the purity of the heart. For them, the heart is not pure. So then they will come up with ways, which is like, in this case, it is circumcision, in a modern world, in terms of prosperity gospel, they would ask you to give money so that you could become rich. And they come up with all other kind of ideas to just to feed them. And so if the heart is not pure, and that's what Paul is saying, that there is no point in doing that. And verse 16 is again really, really tough. Paul being very pointed. So I would leave yourself with that thought, and probably the quote from C.S. Lewis, that whatever it is, it's not moderately important. It's not like we can have it in our life. It's a good thing to go to church, be a Christian, just leave it there, because then the danger is that there's a whole lot of other group who is very actively involved in propagating untruth about our Lord, which is not true. So I have a couple of discussion questions. Next slide. Yeah, this time it is big enough. 3 questions. Time to discuss among your table how that would apply to you. Thank you.